G'day everyone, it's Alistair Phillips doing a long distance interview for Spyderco. I'm going to give you a quick workshop tour and then we might discuss a few things about how I got into knife making and my philosophy that I use when I design my knives. So I work out of my garage. This is where all the magic happens. I Tetris all the equipment in over there and pull it out whenever I need to access one of the stationary tools or move the equipment over to the other side when I need it. Over this side we have my lathe under that spotty cover on the right. From the lathe then we have the bandsaw. I swap blades out regularly on that with one for G10 and carbon fibre and one for steel. The G10 really wears out your blades, so I keep separate blades for that. Then down over there I've got my air blast cabinet and my surface grinder just next to that. That's one of those static pieces that I have to move everything out of the way to access. Behind that we've got the CNC. At the moment the CNC is set up for making the backspaces for the Spyderco Kapara. If you've bought a backspacer from me, one of my aftermarket ones, that's where it's been made, on that fixture there. They start off as just raw sheet of G10 and then come in here. The first operation up the back is to drill some holes so that they can be held down at the front, and then the front two spots there are where I machine out the backspaces. After that they get taken over to the grinder and I clean up all the edges and double check that they're the correct dimensions and they'll fit on a Spyderco. Over here I've got my disc grinder. This I use to make things nice and flat. And I also use it when I'm finishing my blade bevels. It's set up so that it can be used horizontally like that, or I can flip it around and I can rotate it up so that I've got a vertical disc as well as the horizontal disc. And then it's hooked up to this VFD. The VFD is there. I can just unplug it and swap between my grinder and my disc grinder. So my grinder is a Radius Master, made in Australia. There you go. And it's really good. I really like this as a grinder for folding knives especially. I've got all these wheels here that I can switch between and that one as well. The whole body of it can tilt up so that I can rotate it and access the big wheel at the back for hollow grinds, and the whole thing, same as my disc grinder, can be tilted over so that it will sit horizontally as well as vertically. So this is where I grind all my bevels, do all the shaping of my knives, everything like that. In a typical workshop there's kind of junk everywhere. Then we go to the desk or the workbench. Here we've got my little mill that I use. That's where I do most of my drilling for my handmade knives that aren't on CNC. And then around to the workbench. Very, very messy workbench. But you know, that lets me have everything where I need it. So sitting there on the workbench is my prototype of the Spyderco Kapara, the redback. That's the original one. I made two of them and sent one off to Spyderco. But I like everything handy on the bench there, so I keep it, you know, well within arm's reach to be able to make everything. Okay, so how I got into knife making. Well, there's two stories to this. One starts back in 1991 when I was just a teenager and we lived in Janelli in New South Wales. The local butcher to us was actually a custom knife maker and he got me interested in knife making. So I actually started my first knife back in 1991 and I never finished it with him. I moved away from New South Wales down to Canberra in the ACT, and then went to university and continued to carry that unfinished knife around with me in my bottom drawer or something like that as I moved between share houses and all that sort of stuff at university. And then eventually we lead up to when I realistically really started knife making. I got started knife making after being given a course on how to forge knives down at Tharwa Valley Forge. This was fixed blades initially, but after 2 or 3 of those, I very quickly moved across to folding knives, and that's where my passion really lays. The reason I like folding knives is that in my mind that's going to be the knife that you have on you all the time. Whether it's in your pocket or in your backpack, it's going to be the knife that you have carrying with you every day. Just wanted to say a big thank you to Spyderco for bringing out the Spyderco Kapara, and all the Spyderco fans out there. I hope you've picked one up, and I hope you've enjoyed this long distance interview.